of statements in recent history.
Let me make it very clear. We will not be part of measures that will impoverish Ghanaians, measures that will exacerbate the already harsh and difficult conditions that Ghanaians are facing.
The Chamber of Pharmacy, the Pentecost and Charismatic Council, and the Catholic Bishop Conference are all weighing in tonight, sounding alarm bells. But the governing MPP says a budget will provide ways to create jobs.
Government should come out with policy framework that will ensure job creation, SMEs, that will harmonize relationships among the fiscal space parameters.
This is Top Story with Evans Mensah.
We can. In the next 24 hours, the finance minister will appear before Parliament with what could easily pass as one of the most anticipated budget statements in Parliament, warning of a boycott. The minority says they will not be part of any budget which will impoverish Ghanaians. The NDC MPs want government to cut down on expenditure less than 24 hours before the presentation of the 2022 budget and economic policy of government. The finance minister, Ken Ofori-Atta, on CDs for the fiscal year with expected revenue of around 89.1 billion. Now, leaving a band compensation alone will represent about 91% of what government seeks to raise as revenue in the budget, in the 2022 budget. My Member of Parliament for Yape Kusogu, who is also the minority spokesperson on energy and the ranking on the Mines and Energy Committee in Parliament, says the minority will be closely monitoring this and that they will not want to be part of anything that imposes additional hardship on Ghanaians. Listen to John Junapo.
Are tight. Ghanaians are complaining. The cost of living is very, very high. Given the fact that the high cost of living, both with food inflation and non-food inflation, especially petroleum products, which has a cascading effect on the general cost of living that he can accommodate. When things are tough, when the economy is tough, what you do is to cushion people. I've heard the issue of COVID. It's true that COVID might have an impact, but Ghana is not an island. We have examples in Senegal, its measures. Because tax increments can also be a disincentive towards productivity.
But we need to maximize revenue.
Yes, you need to maximize revenue.
Because of COVID, businesses are struggling.
Already revenue is being maximized. The GRA has indicated that they are meeting their targets. Petroleum products alone, we are making a windfall of about 600 million. Cocoa production has gone beyond 1 billion. And so when it comes to the revenue measures, I am convinced that we are meeting the revenue targets. We're with GRA at Imprayaso. Okay. They told us that their target that has been set, they are achieving that target. And so if they are achieving that target, if there's a windfall with oil revenue, if there's a windfall with cocoa prices, and so revenues are increasing, we'll be looking at the figures. We'll interrogate them. We'll be interrogating the figures, both tax revenue and non-tax revenue. But from the report I'm getting, the revenues are not that bad. Okay. It's the cost or the expenditure side that we ought to look at and see whether we can cut costs and balance the budget. I think that should be the main issue. The key problem is the debt servicing. Let's be honest, it's the debt servicing in terms of the interest payment and the principal, which is the amortization. That is where the challenge is. And so I think that we should look at that. The other area is where we are paying, but we are not reporting for. There are a lot of payments that we do. If you take Get Fund, if you take ESLA, if you take the Sinohydro facility, and some other areas that the state pays. But for very strange reason, the state has decided that it's not part of our national debt. And yet we are paying for that. That puts a huge strain. From the minority side, we would not, let me make it very clear, we would not be part of measures that will impoverish Ghanaians, measures that will exacerbate the already harsh and difficult conditions that Ghanaians are facing. I think that that's something that we would not take. Rather, we should be looking at how we can cushion Ghanaians in order to make their living conditions a bit more easier for them because they've already committed that salaries will only be increased by 7% in the 2022 budget. Salaries were increased by 4% against 10.6. Now you are going for 7% against a double-digit inflation. So already the Ghanaian is struggling, and I think that's why we are in leadership. We must take steps to ensure that we cushion the living conditions of Ghanaians, and that's where we are going to really pay attention.
Well, but his colleague, MP for Nshaiso in the Ashanti region, Dr. Stephen Amoah, is hopeful the budget will address issues of jobs and incentives also for business. He's been talking to my colleague in Parliament about these key issues. We'll also be speaking shortly with the minority side as they prepare for the budget tomorrow. They've been issuing already, as we've heard there, a few warning shots there as far as the budget is concerned. We'll also hear from the Chamber of Pharmacy. They've also issued a statement tonight ahead of the budget warning of prices of medicines going up if government goes ahead with plans to reverse a policy that led to reduction of duties at the ports. We'll get to that very shortly, but listen to Stephen Amoah.
Understand here, our debt levels are going up. We can't say we can't take taxes. So you are saying that our debt levels are going up. We should be careful the way we are borrowing. You are saying that we should reduce taxes. So how are we going to finance our project? We are a country that for 19 months, because of COVID-19, our productivity has been very sluggish. Market operations, in fact, for about 9 months, we were home, but government was paying workers. Have we forgotten about all these things? Let's be honest with ourselves. But even then, if we are putting away COVID, almost every primary macro indicator that we inherited, we are better than them today. Check. Inflation, we inherited 15.4. Interest rate, almost 40%. Treasury bills, 22.5%. So let's not do politics. What I am advising the government to do, and that should be the expectation of Ghanaians, realistically, not reduce taxes, add taxes. That one, I think you haven't done any scientific statistical work, is that government should be able to create a very, equilibrium to harmonize all the congested fiscal space parameters, i.e., our debt levels, our interest, our taxation policies or tax policies against, the deficit there. You should be careful borrowing. You should be careful touching or calibrating the tax scale. So what you have to do is to find areas which have very minimal or almost zero correlation with GDP growth and cut down expenditure.
Well, everybody else ahead of this budget, from all the sectors making demands of the finance minister tomorrow, it turns out that Parliament has its own list of demands. The Speaker, Aban Babin, is warning the legislature will, under no circumstance, accept a cut and erratic release of its allocation. They want more. They want what they believe they deserve. Listen.
Even Parliament itself, after the approval, will have to go cap in hand, begging the ministry for the release of its own budget estimates. There's no way that I would tolerate that. No. We won't go to the Ministry of Finance to beg for the release of our estimates. It must be done, like it's done for others. And so, it's refreshing to note that the issue that we are raising here, particularly dealing with public goods and services for the citizenry, is so crucial at this time, where the people of Ghana are looking up to us for hope. I can tell you that the word politics or politician now sounds so sour in the mouth of many Ghanaians. They don't want to hear it at all. But we cannot do without it. What do we do to bring up the spirits of the people? So Parliament is the hope, and we cannot afford to fail the people of Ghana. So while these factors are very important, I think there's a need for us to go beyond that.
Well, joining me on the telephone right now is the former energy minister. He's also the ranking on the Trade and Industry Committee in Parliament, MP for Lembele, Ama Kofi Boa. Mr. Boa, thank you for your time on Top Story.
Evans, good evening, and good evening to your listeners.
Great to have you. Your colleague, Dr. Stephen Amwa, MP for Nshai, also joining us. Dr. Amwa, thank you for your time. Okay. Mr. Amwa, so tell me, Mr. Boa, let's start with you. I hear the minority talk about the anticipated budget, and there's a sense I get of a bit of doom and gloom anticipation. Why do I get that sense? Or am I wrong?
Evans, I think that if you are living in Ghana, when you make a statement that the people of Ghana are really on their knees, there's a high cost of living, it's really making everybody struggle, the suffering is real. And I think it is very, very clear that the expectation in this budget is that we expect measures that will give relief to the struggling people of Ghana. This budget must give hope to businesses that are really collapsing, that are. And so it is true when we say that the minority in Parliament will not support any measure that would deepen the suffering of the people of Ghana. I think that is the point. I mean, you have been in Ghana. Let's talk about this year alone. I mean, just go to fuel prices and look at the petrol of taxes. 6.8 CD liter of petroleum, almost 4 CD of that is in taxes. And look at the impact it is having on businesses and food prices. Look at the CD's performance and how it has created uncertainties for businesses. I mean, we are not creating jobs. Now, this is a government that promised, Evans, that they are going to move this economy from taxation to production. What has happened? We have borrowed all the way to the moon. We have borrowed from 128 to 2016 when we left at 333 billion today. Moved debt to GDP from 56% to 80%. All sustainable levels. That's where we are. This is the record. This government now has a responsibility to really get the people of Ghana to breathe again. And we expect to see that in this budget. We expect to see this economy working. We expect to see businesses having a sense. Nobody can even do any business. The cost of doing business in Ghana is just impossible. And so, are you surprised the unsustainable level of unemployment and hopelessness? This budget must address these issues.
Yeah, but Mr. Boa, in the context of an economy globally recovering from a COVID pandemic, and we've seen everywhere in the world now, an economy struggling. Yes, isn't it then appropriate to expect that government will have to introduce measures so that will raise a bit more revenue? That may mean a bit of austerity.
Now,
isn't that what all governments do at this time?
Let me put it this way. No. Let me put it this way. I think this government has been the luckiest government when it comes to revenue. The Ghana Revenue Authority has stated that they are meeting their targets. More importantly, let's think about 2020 and the budget. Remember the projection, $54 a barrel. Ghana is a net exporter of oil, for example. We projected $54 a barrel. Luckily for us, crude prices has gone to almost over $80. Our projected $800 million that we were going to get is now projected at $1.2 billion. What we are saying, for example, is that this government must be a little caring. Use that windfall to cushion Ghanaians in terms of, for example, crude prices. And let it breathe it here because it has a cascading effect on food prices, on transportation costs, and people's living standards. And this budget must really, really show the way in all these areas I've talked about. Very critically. And that's all we are saying. And we are saying that look at the low debt budget in the last 2020. Sanitation, everything on petroleum alone. What has that impact been? This government cannot come to Parliament tomorrow and continue loading on, and the only answer they have is taxes. Is this what this government promised the people of Ghana. We are, the minority, will not be part of any measure that would deepen the suffering of the
Let me ask you for clarity on that. Let me ask for clarity on that point. When you say you'll not be part, what exactly does that mean?
I think I've stated it.
As in you would not participate in the debate, or you will reject it?
I don't think that I have the authority to disclose our strategy on this discussion, but I think that it's very clear that you will know that the minority will not be complicit in any steps that would deepen the suffering of the people of Ghana.
I mean, Dr. Stephen Amoah, you don't disagree, and I heard you say that expenditure needs to be cut. But as you heard the minority say, they will not tolerate anything else that will burden Ghanaians further. Is that a fair point to expect going to tomorrow?
Thank you very much. My regards to our listeners. But I think I didn't make just a general statement like what you're saying, my brother, so that Ghanaians will understand my point. I said that if there's anything to do with cutting down expenditure at this time because of the congested fiscal space, we need to select areas with almost zero correlation with our GDP and impact on employment and other areas, then we cut them. Because if you also don't cut wisely, it's like you cut your nose to spice your face. That's what I said. But, boss, getting one or two issues correct. Our brothers are talking about taxes, they are talking about debt, they are talking about debt to GDP ratios, and talking about a whole lot of issues that if we want to do policies with them, they want to do it. That is where we bring the comparative analysis, which I didn't want to do. Between 2012 and 2016, they increased our debt portfolio by over 240%. We had no COVID to affect our revenue generation. Between 2008 to 2016, they increased Ghana's debt portfolio over 1,000%, from 9.3 to over 120 billion. But I don't want to do all these things. Evans, we had about 19 months of this pandemic disease, which led to almost, our productivity and market activities and operations going down zero. You know, government workers were staying home, but they were being paid. We gave a lot of freebies, even talking about fuel. Look, go and check. Kenya, liter is 1.18. Uganda is 1.19. South Africa is 1.29. Now ours is 1.12. Even talking about that. If you want to manage your fiscal space, you don't just wake up because of political capital. You want government to look bad. You think you have some section of Ghanaians you can convince without any statistical analysis and scientific work that say, remove taxes, add taxes, remove this, don't borrow. Our debt to GDP, yes, is over 70%. But the causes of all this are as a result of uncontrollable factors. If we were asked to stay home without going to work, cars were asked to park, restaurants were asked to close down, we have to stay home, we're not working. Yet government was spending because we have statutory requirements such as interest payment as a result of accumulated debt right before NDC, and MPP today. We're providing social amenities and services to mitigate impact of the disease. Government was spending, but we're not growing our GDP because
that is what the finance minister told us ahead of the 2021 budget last year. This is a year on. We are still making the same excuses.
No, but it's still having impact. You see how economy is built up. It's not an event, it's a process. But because of this, we had already borrowed and we're not growing. And so our debt to GDP, even the World Bank projected negative 3.3 2020, but we grew 0.4 to almost 0.9. So what we are saying today is that any attempt to reduce, look, our debt to GDP is around 14%, far below even the global standard and even the continental standard. If you are talking about these things, even effective tax rate, have they done that calculation? Effective tax rate, you're talking about tax collected minus transfers from the government to the households over total income. They are all negative. And you're saying that, yes, we should go ahead, cut our tongues and eat. It is not right. We can't do that. It is a strategic drift. It will rather give us what is called cyclical effect. That the very thing that we want to solve, it will go around and come affect us in higher or bigger magnitudes.
Just for clarity, are you supporting the views we've heard and anticipation of the budget that says there are going to be new revenue measures that may increase tax burdens, etc., on consumers? For example, increase in tolls, reversal of the of benchmark values that again may increase port duties. You support those?
But why do you say it's going to increase tax burdens? I support any policy that will ensure that Ghanaians in the medium term and long term will not come back to this situation again. That's what we have to look at. And I also support any option in terms of financing, which is available today for us to utilize. You cannot sit down and say that your debt to GDP is over 70. Your revenue collection has shortfalls of about 14 billion last year, and we are asking us to reduce. How do we perform our social obligations? How do you pay the interest? How do we perform our debt interest payment obligations? How do we do health sector obligations that we have, infrastructure that we have, electricity and water? So how did they want us to? And even if they are asking for cutting that expenditure, which of course is also possible, but not done arbitrarily the way they are talking about it. Evans, what work have they done or have we done to let us know that we can cut down area A, B, C, D? We can save or have about $1 billion. And the obligations we have today and the deficit to manage, that amount is enough to do that. We don't do things arbitrarily in managing or mechanizing our fiscal space in terms of the economy. We don't do that. We cannot do that. It's totally wrong. It is a wrong policy or option that they want to, maybe because of politics, they are displaying intellectual dishonesty or unconscious incompetence. But I think this one will not augur well for this country.
Mr. Boa, just a quick question to you. Is the minority suggesting that you will not entertain any new revenue measures, although you concede that revenue mobilization has been a challenge?
Listen, the chicken has come home to roost. Now you listen to my colleague, and what he's saying is that the people of Ghana must be blamed for the suffering because somehow they sat at home during COVID.
Is that what I said, Evan? This is propaganda.
Is that what you say? The reality is that we supported this government.
I have never
with
said
a lot
that,
of steps,
please.
knowing that there was COVID and there was an emergency. How much money did we go on the petroleum revenue? Over $1 billion to this government.
And how much obligation did we have to perform?
Money that was borrowed.
How much obligation did we have to perform? How much? What was the cost? What did you leave for us?
We took important
Even electricity companies owned by state institutions. At time we cleared all of them. You left about $2 billion. We have to clear them as a government.
Please, we can't continue to talk about the things we've done to address COVID.
No, but they are all important. They form the basis.
The point is that tomorrow's budget address the suffering of the people of Ghana. We cannot pile it on. For example, you talk about mark revenue and its impact. Evans, look at the circumstance we are in now. What would that do for businesses? Would that create jobs? Businesses are already on their knees. What is the implication? These are the very tough questions that this government must answer. This is a government that has refused to take any advice. That's why we are 333 billion in debt. It is time for government to now listen. The people of Ghana have had enough taxes.
Yeah.
And tomorrow we expect this government that brags that they have the men and that they are going to move this economy from taxation to production to show us finally that they are as empty as we have seen.
I mean, Dr. Amoah, isn't it factually accurate to state that where the economy is now, the Ghanaian people simply can't take any more either additional, tax burden or any other measure that will impose additional burden on them?
I didn't hear you.
I mean, I'm just asking. I mean, isn't it accurate to state, looking at where we are and how many have said the country is pretty tough now, that Ghanaians can't simply take any more measures that will impose additional burden?
No, that statement will be arbitrary statement. It's not being backed by any serious scientific or statistical data that we can say A, B, C, D. But what I'm trying to say is that, Evans, we have given this country to be managed by this authority. Even compare all the macroeconomic parameters that we inherited 7 January, where they are today, about 90% we have improved upon them. It's a fact. Even with this situation, you can compare all of them. But the NDC guys are painting picture as if we don't care about the plight of Ghanaians. They are a social democratic party. Tell me any of the pro-poor policies of national character they implemented. Even simple teachers and nurses allowances, they cancelled all of them. We don't want to go in there because they cannot. Look, now if ships even transport things to Ghana, the vessel owners, the things they are charging $4,000 or $2,000, they charge between $12,000 and $15,000.
But Dr. Amwa, you just said Ghanaians. You just said Ghanaians. Sorry, Mr. Bois, forgive me. Mr. Amwa just said Ghanaians are suffering. If what you say is true,
it's only Ghanaians global.
No, but I'm just using your. You said it. You said it. I'm just repeating what you said. You said Ghanaians are suffering. I'm asking you. You think if Ghanaians are suffering?
The fact that we are suffering.
Yes,
because of the disease.
If Ghanaians are suffering, you think they can take any more bedding?
No, there's not more burden. Look, it's like having a particular disease, and you need to take this medicine so that you be well and move on and grow well, and you don't die. This is what we are doing.
Okay, I'm grateful, Dr. Amwa. I'm grateful, Mr. Amakofe Bois. Tomorrow we'll get to know what government decides to do. I have more for you on Newsnight, by the way, on this because this evening more labor unions are warning they will resort to extreme measures should government fail to factor their demands into the 2022 budget. We're hearing from the pharmacy chamber warning prices of medicines will definitely go up if the anticipated plans to return to a regime where the benchmark values that were removed have been restored. If that regime is implemented by the finance minister tomorrow, they're warning that price of medicines will go up. We're hearing from a number of unions tonight ahead of this budget. Stay with us. Details on Newsnight in a minute.